I watched him. First of all, Donald Trump always looks the same. He's hard to read because he's always kind of got that characteristic scowl that he's branded over
Hmm.
the years.
Hmm.
And he displayed that in full force as he usually does. But what stood out to me is Mrs. Clinton's expressions. You'll notice that in debates number one and number two, she smiled more. She
Hmm.
was very more even tempered. She seemed more on the attack last night, which is ironic because a lot of people thought, gosh, all she has to do is show up. She's so far ahead in the polls. It's not even close. She was ahead in the polls going into debate number one and two as well, but she really laid back and was more measured. This time she really went at him, and her expression was more focused. It was more assertive, dare I even say aggressive, tempered a bit with her outfit because she was a vision in white, which was, I would imagine, very different per the viewer's standpoint than the red suit she wore in debate number one, if you remember. So she's gone
Yes.
from aggressive red to navy blue, which is the color of honesty, to pure white last night. So it was interesting. She put so much thought into all of this, whereas Donald Trump apparently really shoots from the hip at all these debates. Although I don't know, I find that a bit hard to believe given how savvy he appeared on some of the more substantive issues than he was in debates number one and two.
She's getting a lot of criticism on, social media for her sinister grandma smile. A lot of people are talking about her sinister grandma smile, but I thought that it's always interesting to see what comes out, whether it's the guy in the red sweater or her crazy smile or something that
You know what?
Donald stalking her like a silverback,
And
something else weird
I
comes
love
out.
that you're pointing these things out. I love that you're pointing these things out because these are the things that voters pick up on. Remember, viewers are voters. And the fact that they are affected by some of these very down to earth, practical, almost things that hit us viscerally is
Mhm.
important. In other words, voters aren't saying, oh, I just felt so close to her. I mean, she's just like me. Nobody said that after any of these three debates. But again, they also don't say that about Donald Trump. These are two candidates to whom we cannot easily relate.
There was one topic where they seemed to be talking over each other a little more than others. Russian influence on American politics is one of the topics that had Hillary and Donald talking. So I must admit he did grill Clinton a bit on corruption. So to his credit, he didn't just go after Donald.
It's true. I've been a trial lawyer for 20 years, and Chris Wallace reminded me of a judge last night
Oh
where
yeah.
Donald Trump kept thanking him when he delivered a ruling that was in his favor.
Oh, that's hilarious. You're right.
Was exactly right. And Chris Wallace, obviously he didn't mean to do so. He was simply teeing up the next question. But when Donald Trump kept, thank you, he was just so put off. Like, this is not my role. I don't want either candidate to thank me. But I got to say, having said he's going to step back and be the moderator, he also did his job. As you mentioned, he did
Yeah.
ask the tough questions and he did exactly what he does on his Sunday show is he did as best as he could make sure they actually answered the questions that were asked. That was a tough job. He did as best that he could. I thought he ended up doing a very good job all around.
Now, as far as people holding their nose and voting for Trump, why are people holding their nose and voting for Trump?
Well, they're holding their nose because they want a Republican in the White House to
Right.
make sure that they get all the goodies that comes with that, which includes conservative Supreme Court justices, less taxes, more jobs. Now, obviously, the Democrats would argue, yeah, but we can get some of that under Hillary, but not in the way that Republicans traditionally believe that they can. And they also believe they're electing a package deal. I mean, maybe they're holding their nose and voting for Mike Pence. There's a lot of people that really like the fact that he chose just such a contrast, not a compliment, but a contrast in Mike
Mhm.
Pence. And they
Mhm.
believe by voting conservative, they're not just voting for Donald Trump, the person, they're voting for their future, they're voting for their children. And one more thing about the Supreme Court picks, Donald Trump, if he wins, which I don't think he will, but if he did, he'd be in there for 8 years. But Supreme Court justices will be appointed for life and will have lifetime tenure and influence over some of those very tricky decisions that so far haven't even been before the court because right now they're not at full speed, they're still at 8. And some of the diciest decisions they're going to make are going to be split 4-4 unless a new justice is appointed. So that's why the timing is so important regarding this election. And that's why some Republicans are going to vote Republican regardless of who's at the top of the ticket.
You just said something pretty important. You said if he wins, which I don't think he will, and he mentioned last night he may not accept the election results. So why do you think he won't win?
Well, the numbers, it's just math. It's not so much momentum at
Yeah.
this point, but math. And I
Hmm.
know everybody says, oh, it could be Brexit. The polls might not be indicative of the real numbers. And that might be true if they weren't so far apart. That's what
Right.
really does it for a lot of people in looking at these polls. They're not neck and neck. Were they
Right.
neck and neck, I would say it could go either way. It could be a toss up. And I do believe to some extent there are stealth voters who would never publicly admit they'll vote for Trump, but they will. But that many, not that many of them to make a difference when they're simply this far apart. Not going to happen.
Well, we sure do appreciate you very much, Wendy Patrick. Is there a place we can find you?
WendyPatrickPhD.com. Visit me there, contact me there. It's wonderful being on your show. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Wendy. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk a little bit about some lighter topics. For instance, a man remodels his home and uncovers a mysterious suitcase. What is inside? Ooh, it's pretty cool, actually. And then a man attached a flying skeleton to a drone, and people went absolutely nuts. It actually does look really cool. And then we'll talk a little serious news as well.